The fluorescent lights of the New York County Courthouse buzzed overhead as Jennifer Matthews sat alone at the defendant's table, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the polished wood. At 34 years old, she had built her tech startup from the ground up, a company specializing in cybersecurity software for small businesses. But today, none of that mattered. Today, she was here to face the inevitable. Her ex-husband, Richard, sat across the aisle with his attorney, a shark in a $3,000 suit named Gerald Beckman. Richard looked smug, his arms crossed over his chest, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. He had always been good at wearing masks. During their marriage, he had presented himself as supportive, encouraging even. But after their daughter Emma was born 7 years ago, everything changed. The control, the manipulation, the financial abuse that she had been too exhausted to recognize while juggling motherhood and her fledgling business. The divorce had been brutal. Richard had drained their joint accounts, hidden assets, and left Jennifer with nothing but debt and legal fees she could not afford. Her company, which had been on the verge of a major breakthrough, collapsed under the weight of the financial strain. Investors pulled out. Employees had to be let go. Within 6 months, everything she had worked for was gone. Judge Patricia Holbrook entered the courtroom, and everyone rose. Jennifer felt her legs wobble beneath her. She had not eaten much in days. Emma was staying with Jennifer's mother in Queens, blissfully unaware that her mom was about to lose everything officially, legally, irrevocably. The proceedings began with Beckman's voice, smooth and condescending, outlining Jennifer's financial situation with clinical precision. He painted her as reckless, as someone who had gambled with marital assets and lost. He conveniently omitted Richard's role in sabotaging her business, the frozen accounts, the withdrawn investments he had orchestrated through his connections in finance. When it was Jennifer's turn to speak, her court-appointed attorney, a tired public defender named Marcus Chun, did his best. But they both knew the truth. The evidence was stacked against her. The bankruptcy was inevitable. Judge Holbrook reviewed the documents in silence. The courtroom was so quiet Jennifer could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Finally, the judge looked up, her expression neutral but firm. "You are hereby declared bankrupt under Chapter 7. All assets will be liquidated to satisfy outstanding debts. This includes the remaining equity in your business, personal property, and any future earnings will be subject to garnishment until your obligations are met." The words hit Jennifer like a physical blow. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She would not cry in front of Richard. She would not give him that satisfaction. But then Beckman stood up, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain. "Your Honor, if I may add, this woman has demonstrated a complete lack of financial responsibility. She put her own ambitions above her family, above her child. And now she expects the court to absolve her of the consequences. She gambled and lost. She is bankrupt now in every sense of the word." A few people in the gallery chuckled. Jennifer felt her face burn with humiliation. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, to tell everyone how Richard had systematically destroyed her. But her voice was trapped in her throat. The judge banged her gavel. "That will be enough, Mr. Beckman. This court does not require editorial commentary. The ruling stands. We are adjourned." Jennifer stood on shaky legs as people filed out of the courtroom. Richard walked past her without a glance, already on his phone, probably calling his new girlfriend. Beckman followed, briefcase in hand, looking pleased with himself. Marcus touched her arm gently. "I am sorry, Jennifer. I know this is not what you wanted to hear. If you need resources, there are programs that can help single mothers get back on their feet." She nodded numbly, unable to speak. As she walked out of the courthouse into the gray October afternoon, the weight of her situation crashed down on her. She had $53 in her checking account. Her car had been repossessed last month. She was living in her mother's cramped apartment with Emma, sleeping on a pull-out couch. And now, legally, she had nothing. Jennifer walked down the courthouse steps, her vision blurred with unshed tears. The city moved around her, indifferent to her pain. Taxis honked. People rushed past with coffee cups and briefcases. Life went on even when yours was falling apart. She did not notice the man watching her from across the street. He was tall, maybe mid-50s, with a weathered face and a leather vest that bore a patch she would not have recognized from this distance. He had been in the courtroom, sitting in the back row, and he had heard everything. Jennifer took the subway back to Queens, squeezed between commuters who smelled of cologne and coffee. She stared at her reflection in the dark window, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Her blonde hair, once carefully styled for investor meetings, hung limp around her shoulders. The blazer she wore had been her power suit, the one she had worn when pitching to venture capitalists. Now it was just another reminder of who she used to be. When she arrived at her mother's apartment building, she climbed the 4 flights of stairs slowly, dreading the conversation she would have to have. Her mother, Linda, was in her late 60s, surviving on Social Security and a small pension from her years as a school secretary. Taking in Jennifer and Emma had stretched her already tight budget to the breaking point. Linda was at the stove when Jennifer walked in, stirring a pot of chicken soup. Emma sat at the small kitchen table, coloring in a Disney princess book. When she saw her mother, her face lit up. "Mommy, look what I drew." Jennifer forced a smile, kneeling down to look at the picture. "It is beautiful, sweetheart. Is that us?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "That is you, me, and Grandma. And that is our castle where we all live happily." The innocence in her daughter's voice broke something inside Jennifer. She pulled Emma into a tight hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, fighting to keep her composure. Linda turned from the stove, reading her daughter's face immediately. "How did it go?" Jennifer shook her head slightly, not wanting to talk in front of Emma. Linda understood. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and gestured toward the small living room. "Emma, honey, why don't you go watch your show for a bit? Dinner will be ready soon." As soon as Emma was settled in front of the television, Jennifer collapsed onto the worn couch, and the tears she had been holding back finally came. Linda sat beside her, rubbing her back the way she had when Jennifer was a child. "They declared the bankruptcy. Everything is gone, Mom. The business, the savings, everything Richard did not already take. And Beckman, his lawyer, he stood up in court and humiliated me, called me irresponsible, said I put my ambitions above Emma." Linda's jaw tightened. "That man has no idea what you have been through. No idea what Richard did to you. It does not matter what the truth is. The court does not care. And now I have nothing. I cannot even afford to buy Emma new shoes, and hers have holes in them. I see her trying to hide it from me. Mom, she is 7 years old and already trying to protect me from feeling bad." Jennifer buried her face in her hands. The weight of failure pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She had tried so hard to build something, to create a better life for her daughter, to prove that she could do it on her own. And she had failed spectacularly. The next morning, Jennifer woke before dawn on the pull-out couch, her back aching from the thin mattress. She had barely slept, her mind racing through impossible calculations. Rent she could not pay, groceries she could not afford, Emma's school supplies running low. The shame of being 34 and completely dependent on her elderly mother was suffocating. She made coffee in silence and checked her phone. 17 missed calls from debt collectors, 3 emails from lawyers, and 1 message from an unknown number with a New York area code. "Miss Matthews, my name is Marcus Kane. I was in the courtroom yesterday. I would like to speak with you about a business opportunity. Can we meet today? I will be at Lou's Diner on Steinway Street at 9 a.m. Coffee is on me." Jennifer frowned. Business opportunity? It had to be a scam. Nobody offers opportunities to bankrupt single mothers. She almost deleted it, but something made her hesitate. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just that she had nothing left to lose. At 8:45, she walked into Lou's Diner, a classic Queens establishment with red vinyl booths and the smell of bacon grease hanging in the air. She spotted him immediately, the man from across the street yesterday. Up close, she could see the details she had missed. The leather vest with patches, the silver beard, the tattoos covering his forearms, and on his back, Unmistakable even as he sat, the winged skull logo. Hell's Angels. Jennifer's first instinct was to turn around and walk out. But he looked up and caught her eye, gesturing to the seat across from him. His expression was not threatening. It was calm, almost grandfatherly. "Miss Matthews, thank you for coming. I am Marcus Kane. Please sit." She sat cautiously, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. "What do you want?" He slid a coffee across the table to her. "I want to talk to you about your cybersecurity company. Before it went under, you were developing some impressive software. Encryption protocols for small businesses, protection against ransomware attacks. I read about it." Jennifer blinked. "You read about it?" Marcus smiled slightly. "I am not just a biker, Miss Matthews. I spent 20 years in IT before I retired. And I still keep my ear to the ground. Your software was good. Better than good. It could have changed the game for small operations trying to protect themselves from cyber attacks." Her throat tightened. "That does not matter now. The company is dead. I am bankrupt. Nobody will invest in me again." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes serious. "What if I told you that is exactly why I want to invest in you? Because you have been to the bottom. Because you know what it takes to survive. And because the people who wrote you off made a mistake. If you are rooting for Jennifer right now, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. This story is just getting started. And trust me, you will want to see what happens next." Jennifer stared at Marcus, searching his face for any sign of deception. "Why would you invest in someone who just lost everything? That makes no sense." Marcus took a sip of his coffee, considering his words carefully. 23 years ago, I lost my first business. Bad partner, worse decisions. I ended up living in my truck for 8 months. A group of brothers gave me a chance when nobody else would. They loaned me money, no banks, no paperwork. Just trust. I rebuilt everything from that. Now I pay it forward. But I am bankrupt. Legally, I cannot even start a new business without court approval. Everything I earn gets garnished." Marcus nodded. "I know. That is why we will not put it in your name. Not yet. We will structure it differently. A group of us, businessmen who happen to ride together, will fund the startup. You will be the technical director, paid as a consultant. Once you are clear of bankruptcy, the equity transfers to you. Clean and legal." Jennifer felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. But it was terrifying. What if I fail again? What if I take your money and cannot deliver? Then you fail. But I do not think you will. I saw you in that courtroom yesterday. I saw how that lawyer tried to break you, how your ex-husband smirked while they tore you apart. And you know what I saw? Someone who refused to cry in front of them. Someone with steel in her spine. That is who I am betting on. Over the next 3 months, Jennifer's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. Marcus introduced her to his network, businessmen who owned construction companies, trucking operations, and security firms. They all needed cybersecurity, and they all trusted Marcus. Jennifer worked 18-hour days, rebuilding her software from scratch, improving it, making it faster and more intuitive. She rented a small office space in Long Island City. Marcus helped her hire 2 programmers, young kids fresh out of college who were hungry and talented. Emma started to see her mother smile again. Linda watched her daughter come back to life. But the real test came in January when Richard showed up at her office unannounced. He walked in like he owned the place, that familiar smirk on his face. Jennifer looked up from her laptop, her heart racing but her expression calm. "So it is true. You are back in business. I heard some rumors, but I did not believe it." Jennifer stood slowly. "What do you want, Richard?" He laughed, a cold sound. "Just wanted to see for myself. You know this will not last, right? You will crash and burn again just like before. And when you do, do not come crying to me for help." Before Jennifer could respond, Marcus emerged from the back office. He did not say anything, just stood there, arms crossed, his presence filling the room. Richard's smirk faltered. He looked between them, suddenly uncertain. "I think you should leave now," Jennifer said quietly, her voice steady. Richard left without another word. Spring arrived in New York with sudden warmth, And with it came the breakthrough Jennifer had been working toward. Her cybersecurity software, now called Phoenix Shield, landed its first major contract with a regional hospital network. The deal was worth $300,000, and more importantly, it opened doors to other healthcare facilities desperate for protection against ransomware attacks that had been plaguing the industry. Jennifer stood in her office, looking at the signed contract on her desk, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, she allowed herself to breathe. Marcus walked in carrying 2 bottles of beer, his usual subtle way of celebrating. "To second chances," he said, handing her one. "To people who believe in them," she replied, clinking bottles with him. The bankruptcy court approved her repayment plan. With steady income and a viable business model, the judge agreed to restructure her debts over 5 years instead of the wage garnishment that would have crippled her. It was not freedom, not yet, but it was progress. It was a path forward. Emma's 8th birthday party was small but perfect. They held it in Linda's apartment, but this time Jennifer could afford the good pizza, a real cake from the bakery, and the toy Emma had been asking for. Watching her daughter blow out the candles, surrounded by her school friends, Jennifer felt something shift inside her. The shame that had weighed her down for so long began to lift. In July, something unexpected happened. Jennifer received a call from one of the venture capital firms that had pulled their investment when her company originally collapsed. They had heard about Phoenix Shield's success and wanted to discuss reinvestment opportunities. Jennifer met with them in their Manhattan office, the same conference room where they had rejected her 18 months earlier. The partner who had personally withdrawn funding, a man named David Chun, sat across from her looking uncomfortable. "Jennifer, I want to start by apologizing. We made a business decision based on incomplete information. We did not understand the full situation with your divorce, and we should have stood by you. What you have built in the past few months is remarkable." Jennifer listened politely, her face neutral. Then she set down her pen and looked directly at him. "I appreciate the apology, David, but I am not here for validation. If you want to invest in Phoenix Shield, you can submit a proposal like everyone else. My board will review it. But I should tell you we already have 3 other firms interested, and 2 of them never abandoned me in the first place." David blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "Of course, we will submit a formal proposal." As Jennifer walked out of that building into the summer sunshine, she felt something she had not felt since before the courthouse. Power. Not over others, but over her own life. She had survived the worst thing she could imagine, and she had come out stronger. That evening, she took Emma and Linda to dinner at a nice restaurant in Astoria. Nothing extravagant, but enough to mark the moment. Emma ordered spaghetti and got sauce all over her face. Linda laughed more than Jennifer had heard in years. "This is nice," Linda said softly. "Having you back. I never left, Mom." "Yes, you did. For a while. But now you are home." 3 years later, Jennifer stood on the stage of the Javits Center in Manhattan, addressing an audience of over 2,000 people at the National Cybersecurity Conference. Phoenix Shield had grown beyond anything she had imagined. The company now employed 47 people, had clients in 12 states, and had just been featured in Forbes as one of the top emerging cybersecurity firms in the Northeast. But today was not about business metrics. Today she had been invited to speak about resilience, about rebuilding after failure, about the human side of entrepreneurship that nobody talks about in business school. She looked out at the sea of faces and began. "For years ago, I stood in a courthouse and heard a judge declare me bankrupt. I heard a lawyer call me irresponsible in front of a room full of strangers. I walked out of that building with $53 in my bank account and no idea how I would feed my daughter. I thought my life was over." The audience was silent, attentive. But that same day, someone saw something in me that I could not see in myself. A stranger who had no reason to care took a chance on me. Not because of my credentials or my business plan, but because he believed people deserve second chances. That belief changed everything. After the speech, Marcus was waiting for her backstage. He had cleaned up for the occasion, wearing an actual button-down shirt instead of his usual leather vest, though Jennifer suspected the motorcycle was still parked outside. "You did good up there," he said simply. "I meant what I said. About you. About second chances." He shrugged. uncomfortable with the attention as always. You did the work. I just opened a door. Emma, now 11 years old and already showing signs of inheriting her mother's determination, ran up with Linda close behind. Mom, that was amazing. Can I come to work with you tomorrow? I want to learn about coding. Jennifer laughed, pulling her daughter into a hug. We will see. Maybe this summer. That evening, back in their own apartment in Astoria, a modest two-bedroom that Jennifer owned outright, she tucked Emma into bed. Her daughter's room was decorated with posters of scientists and astronauts, a far cry from the pull-out couch they had once shared. Mom, Emma said sleepily, are we going to be okay now? Like, forever okay? Jennifer smoothed her daughter's hair back. Nothing is forever, sweetheart. But we are strong, and we know how to take care of each other. That is what matters. As she closed Emma's door and walked to the living room, Jennifer looked at the framed photo on the wall. It was from the day Phoenix Shield signed its first major contract. She was standing next to Marcus, both of them holding up the signed papers, genuine smiles on their faces. She had been broken, humiliated, bankrupt in every sense of the word. But she had learned something crucial. Rock bottom is not the end. Sometimes it is just the foundation for something stronger. Thank you so much for watching this story until the end. If it touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please hit that like button and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss our next stories. And if you have a story idea or theme you would like us to explore, drop it in the comments below. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember that your current situation is not your final destination.